Anthony Reyes was a 37-year-old from Bayville, New Jersey. He had 7 kids and was a black belt. On the evening of June 28th, 2024, Anthony, who was known to take walks, left his home on foot with the expectation that he would return shortly. Anthony did not. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Dunsel, and this is Unfound. Although humans can get a lot right, hey, it's the reason we live a lot better now than we did 2,000 years ago. We get a lot of things wrong too. If there was some universal supreme being fact checker out there who was able to check out what was in our minds, I think we would all be shocked how much up in our skulls is wrong. Me included. Meaning we think we know how the world works, but really we don't know. At least not in total. This certainly happens with disappearances. I thought foul play caused Esther Westenbarger to disappear. Nope. I thought foul play caused Crystal Morrison to disappear. Nope. I didn't think Shanna Boydo walked off. Well, she did. And I'm sure many of you have gotten cases wrong too. Well, with Anthony Reyes' disappearance, the facts don't tell us that much, except to say that Anthony had a lot of issues. So what is the reality of it? And now a summary of the case. Anthony Reyes was an only child, and his mother admits he was spoiled. Anthony became a black belt. He played baseball. Anthony was pretty much your normal New Jersey kid. But in his late teens, Anthony started to show signs that something wasn't right. He had fits of anger for no reason, along with a shifting of his personality. Anthony was soon diagnosed with bipolar disorder that stayed with him the whole way to his disappearance. Yet, he found a way to start a family and get married. And Anthony's wife was supportive of him in taking his medication. Distressingly, though, Anthony spent the 45 days before his disappearance in a hospital because of another problem: schizophrenia. So, on June 28th, 2024, just one day after getting out of the hospital, Anthony was at home with his wife, his mother, and his kids. His mother left at around 7:30 p.m., telling Anthony she would be back in about a half hour. At 8:05 p.m., she returned to find Anthony not there. Anthony's wife said he must have gone for one of his walks, although the wife admitted not actually seeing him leave. Anthony's mother drove around the next several hours trying to find him, to no avail. He was never seen again. Over the next several days, Anthony's family and friends and the police employed all technology, including ATVs and drones, to find him, with no luck. In addition, despite the road in front of Anthony's house being well-traveled, not one driver came forward as a witness to Anthony walking that night. The human mind is a mystery. And I hate to be negative, but I doubt if we will ever truly find a cure for mental illness, like we've found cures for polio, the plague, and a bunch of other diseases that used to kill people. Contemplate whether you think humans will ever find cures for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, for example, while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1. Is it a coincidence that Anthony went missing right after getting out of the hospital? Number 2, if Anthony went on one of his regular walks, why was he noticed on all of those but not on the one where he went missing? And number 3, Are you open to the idea that Anthony did not disappear on his own? Anthony's family has not yet come to a consensus as to what happened to him. The guest for this episode is Anthony's mother, Barbara. Unfound News. I hope you were surprised by part 1 of my interview with Jason Blair, host of the Silver Linings Playbook podcast. When will part 2 come out? I'm just not sure. It will just magically appear in your podcast feed. Next, myself and assistant Eric are patiently waiting for a Coast Guard FOIA response. We got an email stating that they will respond within the next 30 days to our request. Finally, I forgot to mention this, but a couple weeks ago, Unfound published its 500th episode. Gotta be honest, I didn't think I would even make it to 200. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Anthony Reyes, Barbara. Barbara, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you.
Let's start here. Of course, Anthony is your son. How many kids do you have? Where did you all grow up? In New Jersey, somewhere else? Let's just talk about your family in general.
We have one son, Anthony. He is currently 37, and we all grew up in New Jersey.
Right there in the
Ocean County.
Right there in the area where he went missing.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So Anthony was an only child.
Yes, he was.
Wow, me too. All right. I got to ask, did you spoil him or what kind of mother were you to your only child who you could spoil?
Oh my God, he was definitely spoiled. He had everything he wanted. There was a limit. I mean, he had to learn the word no. He learned that very quickly. His dad spoiled him a lot more. He got pretty much anything he wanted. We made good money, and we always had a summer home and a regular home, and took vacations and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, he was spoiled.
Okay. All right. Spoiled. Okay. All right. So you grew up in New Jersey, just Anthony, and of course you said how old he is right now. And everybody should know we're doing this interview on July 16th of 2025. Let's talk about Anthony, specifically your only child. Just talk, growing up, his personality. What was he into? Work? Was he into sports? Was he into music? Video games? Tell the listeners a little bit about Anthony as a young man, maybe back in his teenage years.
He was definitely into music. A lot of music, any type of music. But in his teen years, it was more towards the rap music. But, again, he listened to all kinds of music. Yeah, and he was martial arts. He did martial arts. He did taekwondo for many years until he was about 15. Yeah, he became, I think, a third degree black belt and third degree in weapons. And then, of course, came along the girls, and that was the end of that. He played baseball for his childhood, so he was pretty good at that.
Yeah. Okay.
He was popular. He wasn't a partier per se. I mean, he did go with cousins and stuff, but yeah, he was never really one to go party and go out drinking and all that stuff. I didn't have any police at my door with, doing drugs or anything like that. He didn't really drive much either as he got older. I think he was a little fearful of driving, so he didn't really get into that. Yeah, he did drive when he got older because he had to go to work. When he was working, but he was not big on it,
Okay.
Never said he was afraid, but I think he was a little fearful of driving.
All right. Well, it is. The roads are dangerous out there for sure. I love driving, but I don't think what you're saying there is necessarily unusual. Would you say that going back to school, was he a popular guy? Life of the party or introverted? What would you say about his personality?
He was kind of a life of the party. I mean, when he was there, but he was not. He was a little shy, but once you got to know him, he pretty much opened up to you. I think he had a small circle of friends he used to stay with, and kind of pretty much kept to that. I mean, he was never unsociable. But he would definitely keep his distance. He kind of liked his dad. His dad, he's a talker, but only once you get to know him. So he was a lot like his dad.
Okay. Sure.
But we hung out there with everybody.
All right. Did he graduate from high school? Did he go to college? What about his education?
He didn't want, him and his dad wanted to move to Florida, so we did that his senior year of high school, which drove me crazy. However, we went down and we stayed at our summer house. Or no, actually we sold the summer house. He stayed with his cousins down there, and then we moved down there. We were only down there less than a year. He decided right before graduation to quit school, so he came back up. He was still down there trying to sell. He came back up, and there was some friends of his cousins, and he made friends with them that were living down there at the time. They also had moved back up here to New Jersey. He hung out with them for a little while. That is how we met his wife.
Okay.
And so they were together out of basically she was in high school at the time, just about to graduate, and he did night school and got his GED.
Great. Okay. And what kind of from that did he? What kind of jobs did he have in his 20s? What did he do?
He worked for auto parts stores, a couple of auto parts stores, and then he wind up being diagnosed with bipolar.
Oh, okay. All right, and that diagnosis kind of got in the way of him having consistent work, like a.
He still tried. Because he getting help and he was on medication. He was still trying, but I think he became, like I said, he was always a quiet person. And anybody I ever met that came into the stores where I went when he was there always talked highly about him. That he was very personable. He was very polite.
Yeah.
And anybody that ever said anything about him, even with his diagnosis, always said he was never nasty. He was always polite to people. He never had the anger with them, but he started to get withdrawn.
Okay.
So he couldn't handle people after a while because people were pretty nasty. You know how the public can be.
It can be, yes, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
In retail, so I think it started to affect him mentally, so that really started to play on him. So he started to get more withdrawn and isolating himself. And then, the kids started to come along. She had the baby, the first one, out of high school. And from there, kid after child after child after child.
Okay.
And
let me ask you this. Would you say, as his mother, maybe if you can pick a year, what this would have been when you first, when he was diagnosed with that, were you surprised? Was that a shock to you? Did you see that coming? Or, what were the first signs of it? Would you say, once again, as his mother and seeing him a lot?
It was a shock to me because, like I said, he came back up to New Jersey, was hanging with friends of his cousins, which became his friends. I didn't know those friends, whereas I knew all his childhood friends. He started to become withdrawn, and I could see the anger in him. He never took it out on anybody, but I can see him, his eyes. I always knew when he was angry, his eyes were he had baby blue eyes, and they looked black. Wow. They always seemed to be black. It was the anger he held inside all the time, and I can see it in his facial expressions would change, and he became withdrawn more.
Okay. What year approximately? I realize it's been a while. What year would you say this really is when it really kicked in, when it became obvious? What year? How long?
2000 and maybe 7.
So about 18 years ago, maybe like when he was like 19, 20 years old, somewhere in there.
It was right around when his first daughter was born. She's 18 now, so about that. About 2005, yeah.
7. Okay, so about 18 years ago. 2007, let's say.
Right.
Once again, I'm not asking for the month and day and everything, but approximate year. So by the time he went missing last year, this is something that he had been dealing with, had been struggling with it, taking medication, whatever words you want to use. This had been with him for quite a while.
Absolutely. Then it was diagnosed with the schizophrenia, which was his paranoia. See, the bipolar was more of an anger thing, but the schizophrenia was pushing into that anger kind of thing. Like he would think, he would hear things, or see things, and then it would make him angry. You know what I mean? And then, you have people who know those trigger points and how to push it, and that's where it just kept getting, worse, and he kept going for walks and stuff, and trying to clear his head.
How did his, we're going to talk about his wife here in a bit and a little bit more how they met and everything, but what about the male friends around him? How did they react to that? Were they supportive, or did they distance themselves? I mean, how did people who really knew Anthony well react to this when this started to occur?
Well, he didn't see many friends after that. Like I said, he started to isolate himself, and then his cousins and them were shocked when they seen him, I believe. They seemed to not know how to, because that was not him. Yeah. So they didn't really know how to react to it. But, they did the best they could to try to, play with him and tease him and, But then he started having the schizophrenia, like I said, and he started believing that everybody was wanting to be with his wife, and the jealousy kind of thing. Yeah, so he stayed to himself. He was an observer. He just didn't like to be around people, and when he would just sit back and observe. He wouldn't say much.
Okay. How was he? And you would probably imagine this, Barbara. I've been doing this for 9 years. We've done about 370 disappearances. I've interviewed many mothers like you. And one of the things that comes up is the managing of the medication. Can these people, because we know a lot of people are bipolar, they take their medication, nobody would ever know that, except they have to take their medication. Even when it comes to schizophrenia, that can sometimes be managed through medication. How was Anthony with his medication over all those years?
Well, the two medications that they started him off with, over the years, other physicians used to say that that's not a good mixture. However, I felt that it worked for him, but it was putting on a tremendous amount of weight on him. Oh. And he was having a hard time and, dealing with the weight, because he was always thin and always active and always physically fit. So it was playing on him, and he didn't like it. He became, again, that made him roar, and he was very, he got very emotional over it, and he didn't like how he was looking.
Yeah.
And after a while, I think he kind of gave up, and he just didn't care. But it seemed to be like every time he went to a different doctor, or, like I said, he would take walks to go clear his head or whatever, and if he was walking down the highway, police would pick him up and take him to a local hospital. They would, put him in a facility. Sometimes they would just send him home. And a lot of times they would take him to a facility because, they're going to get paid by the insurance. They would keep him there for a week. They would test him out with different medication instead of putting him on what he was on. And then they would send him home, and then they would say it would be 10 days before medication usually takes effect, but he was out of the facility by 7 days. And they gave him something he wasn't used to being on. It wasn't working. And then he would have to go back because, it wasn't working, and he wasn't able to sleep. He was, he was out of sorts. Most of the time he wasn't able to sleep. And he was a chain smoker. Oh. And he constantly drank those energy drinks. He'd have at least 4 a day.
Oh my.
That's how he was living, because he thought he was just going to starve himself and not eat and walk and lose weight.
Right. Right. When you would talk to him, pick a year in any of those years, of course, before he went missing, when he's going through this, in those moments of clarity, when you would talk to him, what would he say when the medication was working, and, what would he tell you about, all of this?
He would just say, Ma, I really got to start eating better. I really like to stop smoking. The doctors actually gave him the gum.
Nicorette gum, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and, they would prescribe stuff like that, and he says, I really got to start eating better, and, I want to go for walks, and then there was a time he was walking, and he would wear those weighted vests. Oh, my God, they were so heavy.
Yeah.
It would slim down so quick, and then he would go back to, I don't know what was going on at home mentally, so I don't know what triggered him to go back to letting himself go again, or if it was back on the other medication they put him on. He was up and down on medications for years. They're trying to regulate him because he was having issues sleeping. And I believe it was his nicotine and the energy drinks.
Right.
But,
okay.
You see psychologists and psychiatrists, and that, if you don't tell them you're doing these drinking with these things, they're not going to be able to help you. But
that's right. Okay. All right. Thank you for going through that. Thank you. This will, of course, come up later. We've, of course, talked about his wife. You said that they met. She was very young. They had their first child. She was very young. They're both very young. And how many children did they end up having together?
7.
7 kids. Oh, my goodness. All right. 7 kids. And in your opinion, how did she deal with this changing of Anthony, with him being on this medication and everything? Once again, your observation of all those years, their first child, was born in 2007. Of course, they're together for 17 years before, he went missing. I'm guessing you had a chance to talk to her at least a few times about what he was going through. What would she say, etc.?
Well, they lived with us most of the years that they've had all their children.
Huh.
They've always lived with us. However, towards the last, I would say, 6 years, 7 years, they had a home that we were paying for, that they never paid rent. And we figured, okay, let them, they have enough children, let them be adults, let them try to grow up.
Right. We
moved on and got a TV development, and we figured, let them be adults, let them do what they have to do the right things for themselves. Because at first, when they were together, I thought, okay, this is good. She's good for him. She'll be able to give him this medication. They're going to have, a life together. But then as the years gone on, I come to find out that anytime that he wouldn't take his meds, she would say, I'm calling your mom. She didn't do that when they were living with us, because I made sure I would always say, Anthony, you have to take your medicine.
Yeah.
You have to do the right thing. Take your meds, because he hated to take pills. He hated to take meds.
Who likes taking them? Nobody likes taking them, sure, of course.
Right. And the thing is, even people with diabetes, when you're feeling better, you think, I don't have to take it anymore. Well, It was the same thing with him.
Yes.
He thought, I'm doing good. I'm like, you're doing good because you're on the meds. That's why. But then, there's been times where he decided he's not taking them anymore. And I would get phone calls. He was not taking his meds. And I told him I'm going to call his mom. So I'd be dragged into it, even though I'm not living there with them. Kind of situation. Yeah.
All right, so it sounds to me like she was looking out. It sounds to me, the way you're explaining it, that she wanted him to take his medication. And in fact, if she didn't think that she was, had enough power to get him to take the medication, she'd call you in as a backup, saying, hey, Anthony, take your medication.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. And but going back, they lived with you. So the kids, his wife, Anthony, all under the same roof with you for several years, and it wasn't maybe until like 2018 that they moved out into their own place that you owned.
Correct.
Okay. All right. We'll certainly come back to that. One thing you did mention were these walks that he would take. What can you tell the audience about these walks? You said, of course, he was a little upset about putting on weight. We know certain medications do that. Would he have any plan as to, was there always like a time of day that he would go walk? Was it like a schedule? Was he on like a routine? Or what can you say about these walks? Because they may be relevant to his disappearance. It's up to the audience to determine that. But what can you say about these walks? Were they every day, twice a day? How far would he go, etc.?
Well, the thing of it is, when they lived with us, while we were under the same roof with them, he didn't take walks. But it was once we had moved away, he started taking walks. And then, I was called to go look for him, or I would get a call that, because I was always at work, I would get a call that he went for a walk and he has to come back. So I would tell her to call the police stations, call the hospital, see if anybody's got him. Because that's normal. People, God forbid, he fell down, exhaustion, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out that he was in one of the local hospitals, and it was either due to him not taking these meds, or something happened in the home. Maybe he had arguments. I have no idea. I was never ever told a full story.
Okay.
So yeah, he would take these walks. I do not recall him taking walks in the evenings. Once it was dark, I don't recall. Maybe once or twice he did that.
Okay.
Most of the time, it seemed like it was during the daylight.
All right. So I have to ask you, how common was it, once again, just so we have a really good, since most of the audience probably does not know Anthony, but, we've talked about people like Anthony was struggling with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, very common topic. But what would be the reasons that he would get picked up? Was he lost? Or what was going on?
No,
why didn't they just allow him to walk home, or what was going on?
Well, from what I understand, a lot of times he was walking down the road, and it's a hot, tarred road with blue pebbles or whatever, and he had no shoes on.
Wow.
So he had to be going through an episode for him to do that, because a normal person would feel the heat of the road.
Oh my gosh.
Or feel the stones on your feet. Because I do remember them saying how his feet were all cut up and stuff, and he didn't even realize his feet had been cut up, and he was bleeding. So I think the police thought he could definitely see there's something wrong with this guy. He's walking on the road with no shoes on.
Right.
That's not normal. That's not right. That just doesn't fit into what you would consider normal.
Right. All right, so this, even though he was talking about walking for losing weight, but he's out there in his bare feet on a pavement that could be like 150 degrees on a hot New Jersey day. The air may be like 90 degrees, but the pavement will be well over 100 degrees, and he's out there in his bare feet.
Absolutely. They tell you not to do that with animals, and here he is walking that way.
Absolutely true, yes.
But that's the thing, he's not in his right frame of mind. So, that's only one thing that I know of, and like I said, I'm only going by what I was told because I was never there. I spoke with him every day. Good or bad, I spoke with him, and, sometimes he would tell me weird things, and I'd be like, okay, Anthony, think about what you just said. Does that sound normal? Does it even sound close to normal? And then, he really, okay, you're right, Ma. And then, and then he would go back to talking normal, having a normal conversation. However, it's just, I didn't get, always the full.
No.
The full
You're
story.
not there. We understand. You're getting this secondhand. You're not living with them anymore. They're not living with you anymore. And, you're just going by what people are telling you, what Anthony's telling you. You're not there observing it firsthand. But I think, what we're hearing here is that at least some of the times when Anthony went out, maybe he shouldn't have been out there walking. Maybe.
Right.
Okay.
Right. There was also a lot of times that he did call the police officers on his own and say, I need a ride to the hospital because I don't feel right.
Okay.
And of course, they would come or maybe they had an argument and she would call and say, go back into the hospital. You need somebody to look at you or whatever the case. I would get these stories after the fact.
I got you. I realize you're not there. Totally understood. Regarding the police, when Anthony would have this happen and they'd have to take him in, any ever combative, any violence, or did he get along with the police pretty well?
I was told that he was always very, especially if he had to call for himself. I picked him up on the highway. He was always, very polite, never an incident. I think one time they said when he was in the hospital in the emergency room before they put him into the ward to have a psychiatrist look at him, I think that one time they said one of the security guards came toward him and tried to move him or whatever he did with him, and he wasn't happy with that, so he kind of told the guy to don't touch him, and the guy continued to touch him, and he swung at the guy. But that was the only time I ever heard that. It was one time only. Again, I wasn't there because you can never go in there with them. You know, there was actually been times that he's asked me to take him, and I actually did take him and went in, but they would never let me in the room with him because he's of age.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. You know,
right. And we should note for a person who is bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, we shouldn't be surprised that, you know, if somebody's not listening to him, that he might react, you know, in a way, you know, hey, don't touch me, because they're having a mental episode. It's not necessarily because he's violent. It's because he's having a mental episode.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. In your opinion,
never,
please.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, in your opinion, you know, when these things would happen, let's just say once you they weren't living with you anymore, and you would talk to his wife about these situations that he would get himself into, what would she say, you know, when you'd find out that, oh, he's walking on the pavement, you know, in his bare feet, and it's 120 degrees on the pavement? Some of her statements, you know, your conversations with his wife at this time. That would happen.
It was very vague. She didn't say much over the years. She was, I don't know, she just got very, I don't know, she didn't say much. She just said, you know, he's having one of his episodes and the constant fighting and, you know, I can't do it anymore. But then he would say the same thing, I can't take it anymore with the fighting and blah, 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 blah.
All right.
So I always tell them, you know, maybe you guys should walk away from each other. 2 happy homes for the kids is better than 1 miserable home. But they stayed together. Then you see them the next time, and they were happy and in love and blah, blah, blah. You know, I just told them, stop having children. So this doesn't... my concern in the beginning was you really should not have children after this, because we don't know if this is hereditary. Nobody knows yet if this is hereditary. It's not fair to the children keep doing this.
Yeah.
You know, keep bringing them in, and then somebody winds up with it as well, and then they have to be on meds. It's not a way to live.
Right.
You know, if you can prevent it, it's not a way to live. And they, you know, they were both. She was working on and off, and he was working. No, he was doing school, and because he was trying to do night school, and you know, they just didn't listen. Obviously.
Okay.
7 kids later.
7 kids. All right. Let's move up to this. So this is what's going on. And maybe, once again, I realize you weren't there. How often would you say, in leading up to the year 2024, that Anthony would go out for a walk and would somehow end up in a hospital getting treatment because, like I said, for example, he's out there in his bare feet walking on hot pavement? How often did this happen, as best as you can tell?
I can't even put a number on it because, like I said, if he went in, sometimes I didn't hear about it until he was there.
Yeah.
I had spoken to him on May 7th, which was prior to him disappearing. He sounded okay. I spoke to him earlier today. We talked, and we had a good, you know, conversation, and sounded fine. But then again, I don't know if he was putting up a front. I don't know.
Right.
But he sounded good, and then I went to work, and then I received a phone call from one of my granddaughters that her friend seen him walking in the middle of the highway, which is unusual. He always walked the shoulder, so that was new for me.
Yeah.
And he took off his flip-flops and went and walked into the yellow line. I don't know what made him do that. He's never done that before, and then so they picked him up and they took him to the hospital.
Okay. I'm just asking you, how many times do you think in the years leading up to 2024 did, you know, he end up in the hospital while he was walking? Was this once a week, once a month? What would you say? As best as you...
I want to say maybe once or twice a month, maybe, that I know of. I mean, like I said, I can't really give you a number because I'm not there, and they don't always tell me unless he's once in there. Then I find out.
Right.
Or maybe once every 2 months. It was sporadic. It wasn't always. He didn't always set him off when he went for a walk. And if he did go for a walk and he didn't get put in, it was because he came right back.
Right.
Because he never really got that far. He always got within maybe 20 minutes to a half hour from the house. So I always was able to find him within that distance. Mm-hmm. South or north of the home, so
okay.
It's unusual for me not to find him.
All right, so sometimes you would be out there, you'd go find him, walking around.
Right, I always did.
Always
when
did.
I was aware of it, I always did.
Okay. All right. And I guess what we're also saying is there could be plenty of times where this happened that you don't know about it because you weren't told.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because he came home on his own.
Right. All right. Let's talk about this hospital stay. My understanding is that for at least a month before he went missing, he had a hospital stay that was quite long. Maybe 45 days or something like that. You can, of course, be specific about it. But was this unusual? Was this the first time that he was in a hospital this long? What can you say about this hospital stay? Why did it happen? What can you say?
Like I said, he went for a walk. I spoke to him May 7th. He went for a walk. I was told after I had spoken to him, I would say within a half hour. So I was already at work. I get a call, and it was told police officers picked him up, took him to the facility, and I called his wife, and I said, "What is this? This seems to be new. He's walking in the middle of the highway. What is this? Mm-hmm. Is this something to hurt himself? I don't understand this. This has never happened." She goes, very casual. "Oh, yeah, he does this all the time." I said, "No, he hasn't, because I pick him up all the time. He's never done that before." No, he hasn't. But anyway, so I moved on, and I just said, okay, whatever. And I said, "Where'd he go?" She told me where he went. And then within a couple of days, he said, "Okay, so what's going on? When is he going to be released?" She said, "No, they're going to send him to another facility." I didn't know which one. She couldn't tell me exactly which one that she thought it was. And then from there, they sent it to another facility, which was much more north of us. And the visiting hours were when I was working. So I couldn't get there. I believe she did go there once to bring him clothes, but with the 7 kids and nobody there to watch, she couldn't really visit much. So he came home June 27th. He stayed home. He was overnight. He sounded okay in the morning when I spoke to him on the 27th. But then he sounded a little off in the afternoon when I last spoke to him, and I said, "Oh, they're going to release him?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm not sure what time." I said, "Okay," and he got released later on in the day. I was at work. I couldn't go to see him because I was working, and then I went the next day, which was 28. From what I understand, he called the police somehow during the night. He was on the couch, from what I was told, talking to himself. Then he called up the police and said he needed to do a well check on his wife and the babies, because the 2 babies were sleeping downstairs, and I think his one daughter, he wanted a well check. I don't know what that meant. So they came and they checked, and everything was fine. And she told the police officer he didn't want to take his meds. He needs to take his meds. And the police officer said, "You need to take your meds." And supposedly he took it. Again, I don't know. I wasn't there. And then the next day, I went to the house. He wasn't there. He was walking. So I went to look for him. I had the kids and a couple of the kids with me. I went to pick him up and brought him back. And he said he was afraid that somebody's out to kill him. And I said, "Okay, nobody's out to kill you." And he said yes. And something about a tattoo. He needed to get a tattoo. I took him back home, dropped the children off, went to get Chinese food for them, came back. I said, and that's when my one granddaughter and my daughter-in-law said her friend had to be home by 8 p.m. I said, okay, I'll take her, and trying to talk to my son, and he was so out of sorts. I've never seen him look like that. I mean, his blue eyes, always I said, look black. That day, they were not black. They were bluer than blue. So, and he looked very, very confused. I have never seen him look that confused. He didn't have the anger in him. He definitely didn't have the anger. He was so mellow, but at the same time afraid and confused. And like I said, I've never seen him confused that bad before, ever. And
let me just Barbara, let me just jump in. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure, once I go back to this hospital stay, how long was he in this hospital between May and June? How long?
May 7th to June 27th.
All right. And why was this stay that long? What was so different about this time compared to all the other times where it sounds to me like he was only in for a few days? Why a month and a half? I mean, that's a long hospital stay.
I don't know. I asked her, why are they sending him to the other hospital? And she said, I don't know. Very, standoffish. She said, okay. And then when I said, well, is he coming home? And she said, I don't know. And she said, I think they're sending him to another hospital. I said, why? She goes, I don't know. I'm like, okay. So I can never get it, and with the HIPAA laws, you can't get any information. And he's an adult, and he's married with a wife, so I can't get any information.
All right. Did he?
So
all right, I got you. What was he able? Was he allowed to call you while he was in the hospital? If so, what did he say?
He would call me. I would say every other day, and mostly, I think she said she talked to him every day. But he called me. But every time he called me, I was at work and I couldn't stay on the phone long. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, it was like, oh, I can't wait to come home. I think I'm coming home soon. I said, okay, well, that's good. Did they give you a date? He goes, no, not yet, but I'm hoping it's today, but I miss everybody and I can't wait to see the kids. I said, okay, well, we miss you too, just get better. And then, when you get home, we'll talk. But in the meantime, when he was in there, and I had said to her, when he comes home, so this doesn't keep going on, I can't afford a third mortgage. Maybe I'm going to get it like a trailer, kind of camping kind of trailer, and I'm going to put it in the backyard because we got an acre or so back there. And I said, this way he don't go for walks, so I don't have to worry about him getting hit by a car, and the kids keep seeing this. So when he has an episode, he could just go sit and be in his own space for a little while until he, things cool down or whatever the case. But at least I know he'll be on the property, and he's not going nowhere. And she said, yeah, I guess that will be good. She agreed with it. And I was like, okay. Well, I never got that opportunity to say anything to him. That was what I wanted to talk about when I said, I'm going to take, go ahead.
All right. So what I was going to ask, what I'm hearing is that during those roughly 45 days that he was in the hospital, you really didn't have a really in-depth conversation about his health issues, or where you were on the phone with him for an hour trying to understand what was going on in the hospital, what medications they were giving him, anything like that?
No, he never really talked long. I think because he only has so much time to talk because everybody wants to use the phone. I think it's kind of like a public phone.
Oh.
Because you couldn't have anything with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you couldn't have anything with you. And he only had certain visiting hours, and you could have the one place that I used to go to, everybody, all the family members, and you could only have two.
Right.
And all the patients sat in one room where all the nurses would watch.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure we understood that. Just wanted to make sure that these 45 days, and because of course your mother, you're not his wife, you don't have access to the doctor's not going to talk to you because you don't have the rights that a wife does, at least the way how it works in the United States. So if there was any conversations about medication, about his treatment and everything, the doctor or doctors had those with his wife and not with you.
I believe so. I don't really know. She didn't say anything. She was very, it was weird this time that he had gone in on May 7th. She didn't say a whole lot of things to me. She just, she was very off. She was very,
okay.
Yeah, she didn't say much.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that. All right, now we'll go back to that day. And you said when you were there and you saw him, and you said you had never, going back to the day of his disappearance, you said that you had never seen him so confused. Let's continue with that now. You just said when you say confused, he didn't know where he was or what he wanted to do. What does that mean?
It was more, he knew where he was. He knew his children. They were in the car with us. He just did not, to get somewhere where they couldn't find him.
Okay.
But he had no means to do that. He had no money. Like I said, he was in a facility, and his checks were going into the account. His disability checks was going into his account, which he was using to pay, I'm assuming, bills. So he had no access to money. He didn't have his phone. She said he had his phone that night, and he was that he came home on the 27th.
Okay.
But when he went for his walk on the 28th, which is when I picked him up, I think she said he also went on a walk on the 27th, but she didn't tell me this until the 28th when I went to look for him that day. So I don't, like I said, can't give you a number on how many walks he went on. She never mentioned it. And, yeah, he had no phone or nothing with him when I picked him up. He had nothing.
Okay. All right, so but going to the 28th, you actually saw him on this day of his disappearance. You were there.
Well, yeah, I picked him up because when I got there, she said he went for a walk, so I went and looked for him, and I got him at the same spot I always get him in, because that's as far as he can go, because his bad back, he's in flip-flops. It's 94 degrees out. It's hot. And he didn't, it was getting, over the years, he was getting where he didn't trust, this is the conversations we've had, he didn't trust eating anything she made or drinking, because he thought she was poisoning him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Again, that could be his psychosis.
It could be absolutely schizophrenia. Where specifically did you pick him up on that day? What were the crossroads? What was the intersection?
Route 9 and Station Road in Bayville. It's also called Atlantic City Boulevard, which is Route 9, northbound from his home. Okay.
All right, so you pick him up, you bring him home, and then my understanding is later is that you left for just like a half hour, and when you came back, he was gone.
Correct.
Let's talk about that. So where were you going, and how long did you think you were going to be gone? Were you taking somebody somewhere? What were the circumstances of you leaving and then coming back?
The circumstances were my daughter-in-law said, and my one granddaughter, it was her friend, she said she needs to be home by 8 o'clock, and it was because she had her younger sister with us, and that was why I found that curfew time. She had to be home by 8 p.m., so I didn't, check the time. I said, all right, I'll take her home, and as I was making the U-turn away from the home that we owned, I screamed across and said, Anthony, please don't leave. I'll be right back. We'll talk. And I said, again, please don't leave. We will talk when I get back. Okay. I drove her friend home and left her and her two friends, the friend and the sister, home at their house. Coming back north from the south. And it was only about a half-hour ride. And I don't know. I just automatically look because he's so, with the walk. So I don't remember if I got a text, but I was driving, or a call, and his wife said, he went for another walk. I said, okay, well, my usual thing was, well, call the cops, see if he got picked up, if they took him into the hospital again. Because like I said, he had just gotten out, so he didn't look, I guess, he still didn't look well, right. So she said, okay, and when I got there, it was only a couple minutes later, and I was there for like 5 minutes or so talking to her. Did he come back? Do you know where he went? And a police officer pulled up, and he asked me the same thing. Did you see him last? Yes, I picked him up a little while ago, brought him home, told him what he looked like. I said, I probably left here because she had to be home by 8 p.m. I probably left here at 7:30. Mm-hmm. And my daughter-in-law said, no, you left at 7:40. I looked at it kind of weird, didn't think anything of it. I said, okay, whatever. I said, I probably got back here about 8 o'clock. She said, no, he got here at 8:05. Again, I looked at her like, what? Okay, whatever. So I said, yeah, so he usually goes as far as Station Road, and that's usually where I pick him up. And he said, oh, okay, well, we went down that way, but we'll go a little further. I said, well, I'm leaving. I got to go look for him. I'm going. And he stood there speaking with her for a little bit. He said, well, do you want to fill out a missing persons report? And I said, no, he's not missing. I always get him in a certain spot. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, if you change your mind, let us know. We'll come back and fill it out. I said, well, listen, I got to go. You can talk to her. I got to go. So I went. Whatever transpired from that point, whatever she told him, I don't know. I was out all night looking for him, up and down. I was going 2 towns up, 2 towns down. I did this for months. The entire summer, I had to take off pretty much at work because I couldn't concentrate on anything. And then I kind of found out, I talked to her later about 10:30. She said, oh, yeah, I had them come back about 10 o'clock. They filled out a missing persons report.
Let me ask you this. Of course, she saw his wife, saw him walk off. Did she say that when leaving the property, did he go to the left or to the right? Did he go north or did he go south or what?
I had asked her that. I said, well, when he left, where did he go? She goes, I don't know. He went, for his usual walks. He went up towards Route 9. I said, okay, well, did he go north or did he go south? Because when I came south, I didn't see him. And she said, I don't know. I didn't watch him.
Okay.
I said, oh, okay.
Okay.
But then again, he also had children. She has to get back into the house because she had the little ones home. So she had to get back in the house. I understand that. You can't leave babies by themselves.
Did she say she saw what direction he went in? Yes or no?
No.
All right.
No.
Okay, so he takes off, seemingly. You go looking for him. Of course, he's still missing over here now, over a year later. Of course, the police go out and drive around. You go out and drive around. Nobody has seen him. And is she the one who is eventually the one who files the police report?
Yes, she was the one who did, yes.
Okay. And any searches done at the time? And of course, when I mean searches, not just people riding around in cars, but did any people go off the road, like into the woods? Of course, we can't ignore the fact that it's very close to like the bay there, like bordering on the Atlantic Ocean. Did anybody go out into the bay and look for him? What was everything that was done regarding searches?
I had family and friends out. We gathered together on a weekend. We did it several weekends with friends and stuff, and some family members flew up from Florida also, and some came from North Jersey down to look, but the police had gotten, wind of it that we were doing a search, and they asked us really not to have a big search going on because there were much of a search because it's hot, humid, and they didn't want people to, too many people going into the woods, not familiar with the area, and them having not enough resources. God forbid if somebody fell down and, dehydrated or whatever. So we kept it to, a good amount, but it was all family and friends, and we kind of stuck together and just searched out certain areas. But we did search as much as we can. I had a nephew who's in the law enforcement. He has a friend who's searched for missing people for over 20 years. He came down with his drone. He went looking. The police, from what I understood, did drones. They did the dogs.
Okay, so it's pretty complete. Pretty complete is what we're saying.
Right, I have friends, family members that went out on their boats looking too in every area they could.
As best as you can tell, how many miles in any direction did the searches go from where they lived? How many miles?
Oh, as far as local police, they went actually down to Barnegat, which is past where was down past Manahawkin, which is down past. It was over a half-hour ride to look down that way. Yeah, when we got people calling up and saying from the flyers we had posted, oh, I think I spotted him this morning. So they went actually down there as well, because we had told them that we had gotten those calls. But they went down there as well. As far as going any other place, that was the only place I'm aware of that they went, as far as they went. But as far as family and friends, we've gone all the way up to Howell, Wall Township. Though I don't know how he would have gotten there. But we went everywhere we could think of, into Lakewood, Manahawkin. We went for like 30, 40, 50 miles trying to find him and anything. We actually went up to, I think it was Elizabeth, or Linden, to a hospital. Somebody said they might have been up there. We were in New York. I had people looking in New York.
Wow. Now I have to ask you a question. I have to ask you a question, being that I've looked at the map, but your opinion on the area. So if he walked off and you went somewhere, would there have been a chance that if he went off in a certain direction, you would have passed him on the way back to the house? If, when you look...
No, I know.
Please.
I know he's walk. I would know he's walk in the dark. I know.
Okay.
I would have never passed him up.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right, well, what I'm saying is, let's say that, what direction did you go from the house when you left? What direction did you go?
I went northbound because when I came back, I was coming from the southbound, so I would have seen him. But so I went northbound, which is where I found him earlier.
Yeah.
And I continued to go northbound.
Okay. I guess what I'm saying is, Barbara, is when you left before, when he was there and you left and then you were going to come back, when you were coming back, do you think there's were you coming back in the direction that he usually walked or not?
Yeah. Yes.
And of course, you did not see him.
No.
Of course. All right. Just wanted to make that clear because, of course, you're out driving around. You had to go somewhere and then you came back. And then you didn't see him, while you were driving back from that particular direction. Just something everybody needs to remember. Let's move on to this.
Right.
As best as you can tell, did Anthony take anything with him, like a wallet, a phone, keys, anything like that?
Well, when he never took anything with him because there was a time when he had gone for a walk and he had taken his cell phone. Somebody in the local hospital had taken his cell phone. I guess when they took his belongings, and then they took them to whatever ward. Somebody had stolen his phone.
Oh my!
So so he was fearful of that. So he was always conscious. That's the thing. He was conscious that somebody took his stuff, so he never took it with him. So when I said to him, "I'll be back. Please don't go anywhere, but do me a favor, take your ID with you." He goes, "I don't have anything with me, Ma." So he was aware of who I was. He was aware of where he was. He was just thinking somebody was out to kill him.
I'm just asking, as best as you can tell, when he went missing, did he take his phone, keys, wallet, anything with him?
No, he did take his license with him. That was all he had in his pocket.
Okay. All right.
So
the phone, so he wouldn't take his phone because he was fearful that if he had to go back to the hospital, somebody might steal it.
Correct.
Okay. Regarding his phone info, has that ever been checked? Did he use his phone before leaving that day? For just an example, like he might have called somebody, like he was going to meet somebody, anything like that?
Well, the police, from what I was told by his wife, had checked his phone because she said he was on his phone that night, and that's how he contacted police to say to come and do a welfare check. And they checked it. I don't know how thoroughly they checked it. They said there was nothing on it. It indicated he was going anywhere, maybe looking for a bus ticket, but he had no money. Everything, they were broke, basically, and he didn't ask me for anything.
Okay.
So, so they said they looked through it. I think they asked if he had a computer, which he had an Apple computer, and I believe she told him he didn't. But he wrote books, and that's how he did his books. And he did beats for music, and that's where it was on his phone.
Right. Okay. All right. So his phone. So if he had a phone, it was still left at the house. This is not something that he took with him, but we don't know what the actual phone info says.
Right.
Okay. What about witnesses? Anybody that's come forward over the past year saying, you know what, I think I might have seen Anthony that night, or I saw him walking this way, or I saw him talking to somebody. Anybody like that?
There were several people, saying, "Oh, I seen him walking. He was going to the bus stop. He was standing at the bus stop. Then I seen him walking back towards Serpentine, the street that he lived on." But that was the day. Prior, and then that was earlier in the day when I had picked him up. But nothing came forward after the time frame that he was gone.
Okay, so no believable witnesses, but if there are witnesses, it's probably from the day before and maybe even earlier that day, but no witnesses for that night, that 7:30 to 8:30 time frame that you've mentioned.
Correct.
When he seemingly walked off. Okay. Maybe being that most of the people probably in the audience have not been there, describe the area. How many houses are there? Is there a house across the street from where they lived? Houses next door? How busy is that road? I mean, what are the odds that Anthony could leave that property on the road and nobody see him? Once again, being that you're very familiar with the area.
Well, there's houses on both sides. The neighbors are aware of them. They have with the children and everything. And the houses are, they're not close, but there's like, distance between them. But and the house is directly across, two houses directly across the street. So he would definitely have to pass people's homes in order to get up to Route 9.
Okay.
So, and I asked people about, their ring cameras. Nobody caught him on it. I went in both directions. The police said they checked. I went up and down on both directions, all the way up to Toms River, all the way down to Manahawkin, asking for anybody on their ring cameras. Of course, businesses won't give you any of that information. They said the police were there, some of them, not all of them. And the police said that they did it. And I went out again with a friend that's done this before, looking for people. And we went in and asked, and, some said no, they didn't see him. Some said we can't give you that information due to, my manager not being here, the owner not being here. But everybody said the same thing. They didn't see him.
What about, of course, you were out driving on those very roads that night. How busy was it? How many cars were on the roads besides your own that evening?
It was pretty busy because it's a summer night. The kids are just getting out of school. So, yeah, it was pretty busy. It was a clear night. It was just hot, muggy.
Yeah, late June, New Jersey, very common. Very common.
Yes.
But we also have to realize that, a lot of cars out there, it seems that none of those people in those other cars saw Anthony walking on the road.
No, the police officers also checked cameras for a bus to see if he got on a bus. Mm-hmm. Supposedly they questioned the bus drivers for that run. Yeah. They did not recall him ever getting on, and if he had no money, they would have definitely known that he was asking for a way to get on. Right. Yeah, nothing.
Now I have to ask you this. Not that I was told. Please, I'm sorry. Please continue, Bar. I'm sorry.
No, not that I was told of any of this. It was. I'm going by what I'm told.
Yeah, gotcha. Regarding his walking, of course, we've talked so much about him walking actually on the road, maybe even to his own detriment in his bare feet. Were there any times when he left where he was living that instead of going on the road, maybe he went like out into the backyards? Are there woods there? Were there any times that he maybe went a little more off-road, I guess you might say, or not?
When I first got in that house, we were first residing that house. I own it's wooded back there. I own 3 or 4 wooded lots back there. Okay. He did get lost the first time when we were living with them, and he called me up. I was at work. He said, "Mom, I'm lost." And I said, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm in the woods behind the house." And it was dark. And I said, "Okay, well, you need to walk back the way you came." And he said, "Well, my phone is dying." He said, "Use it as a flashlight." He said, "It's dying." However, he did find his way back. He found his way out to one of the roads. And then he went back home on Route 9. So, and my one granddaughter told me he used to go into the backyard and go past the fence line and then go to one of the lots and sit on the log and talk with her. But he never would stray anymore back there because he knew he would get lost. He was not a person to really go into the woods because with the schizophrenia, you couldn't hang out at night and hear different sounds and crackling and stuff. So he would be very paranoid. So I can't imagine that he would be in the woods too long at night and being bit by mosquitoes. But if you're off your meds and you're walking on the road sometimes without shoes, mosquitoes aren't going to bother you. But being schizophrenia, I can't understand how he would be out there in the woods too long. However, we did do all the woods searches as well because you just don't know.
All right, so it's, of course, it's your property. To remind everybody, they were living in a house that you owned on your property. and you had your own property search. You're out there, many other people out there, of course, no signs of him.
Right. The police told me they went out there with those little
ATVs, yeah, four-wheelers or whatever, yeah.
Right. And they searched and they couldn't find anything.
Okay. All right, so you
and
had...
There's always,
Please.
There's always young boys out there on their motorcycles that ride through the woods there. So it's very active from what I heard.
All right, so the reason I'm asking all these questions is that he usually walked on the road, but as Barbara herself said, who knows the area, was there that evening, last saw her son right there and was only gone a half hour. She's gone, she comes back, he's gone, but she's saying, of course, there were cars on the road, there are houses across the street. We have to remember this is in the evening, so it's pretty most likely that these people are at home. But we haven't had any witnesses, at least a year in 45 days or 30 days, maybe 20 days into this disappearance, that nobody's come forward to say Anthony was walking. And that's why I was asking, well, is it possible that he didn't take the road, that he actually went behind the house and decided to, do a nature walk instead of walking on the road? But of course, those areas were searched. The woman in his life, his wife, did she ever offer up a theory? Of course, when he eventually doesn't come in that night, and then the next night, then the next night, and the next night, of course, to this day, has she ever offer up her theory to you about what she thinks happened to Anthony?
No, not a word.
When you had those initial conversations, of course, you're on the property, she's there. I'm guessing you had conversations with her while the police and, people on ATVs are out there. What was she saying?
Well, first, the police officer, I was standing there, asked, do you have anything that we can use for the dogs? And she's like, no, I don't have anything. I said, listen, all these years, how about a pillowcase, a toothbrush, a hairbrush, a blanket, a sheet, anything? And she was like, no, I washed all his clothes while he was gone, and I gave you all the clothes to wash. I was washing clothes while he was in the hospital, and I was like, you don't have anything? And she's like, no. And the police officer says, you have something small, anything? And she's like, okay. I said, well, what about when he came home? He had flip-flops on and he had socks. She said he had socks on, and she said, I said, get those. Those are the most recent thing. And she said, they're in the laundry room, in the laundry bag. I said, well, get them. She said, I'm not digging through the laundry for that. I said, okay, something. I need something. They need something. And she went in and reluctantly got a baseball cap. I'm assuming it was his. And she put it in a Ziploc bag and handed it to them. That's what they used. I don't know how strong the scent was, but that's all they had. 19 years, that's all they had.
Okay, even though all of Anthony's clothes were inside the house.
I'm assuming they were, yes, because I really hardly ever went in there because it was bad and he, was nasty, dirty, so he never really liked us in there. He was embarrassed.
All right, but you didn't even go over in there after. Of course, it's your house. I realize they're living in it, but you own the house. You didn't go in there after he went missing and look around.
Not in the beginning, no. She wouldn't allow anybody. She stopped you at the door.
Okay. All right, but she never offered up a theory as to what happened to him. I think these are just examples. No. I think he got hit by a car and he might be in a ditch somewhere. I think he might have gotten abducted. I think has she ever said in a year and 20 days what she thinks happened, being that he walked off?
Nope, and we were there July for the week that we came by with sparklers and stuff for the kids to spend some time, trying to keep normalcy.
Yeah.
Not a word. She sat at the table with us, and not a word about anything. As if he never existed. This day, nothing, okay. No theories, no nothing.
What about the kids? There were kids there at the time when you left, but they were just young, right?
Right, they were the babies, yes.
Okay, what about the older kids? Where were I know that you said that one of their children was born in 2007, so she would have been 16, 17 last year. Where was she when this all happened?
Oh, she were in May when her dad had first gone into the hospital. She had been basically staying with a friend in another town over, or a couple towns over. She really hardly ever was home. And then the next one, she was the one who I had to take her friend home. And then the third one, she pretty much was at her friend's most of the time, or she stayed by me a lot. So yeah, they weren't around. It was just the young ones that were there.
All right. So the older ones, the teenagers, were not in the house that evening when this disappearance occurred.
No.
Okay. All right. I do have to ask you about this. You told me that does his wife still live in the house? Does she still live in your house on your property?
She moved out April 1st. The last of her belongings she took out April 15th, and then I had moved in somewhere in mid-May.
All right. So about 4 months ago, she moved out. What was the reason that she moved out? Was she not welcome there anymore, or what were the circumstances?
There was a lot that led up to it, but she moved out because I no longer wanted her there. She didn't want to be there because she moved on to another relationship.
She moved on to another relationship.
Correct.
Okay. Are she and Anthony still, at least on paper, married?
Correct.
There's been no divorce proceeding, right? She hasn't filed any divorce papers, being that he's been missing for a year.
I have not been told that.
Okay. All right. And are you aware of how quickly this other relationship started after he went missing?
I was not aware of it at first. I started to become suspicious of something. I would say within a month and a half after he was gone, but then finding out little things here and there from people, speaking, but then you don't know if it's rumors or not. She had been in a long-distance relationship with someone in May. While he
was in the hospital.
Correct. While he was away the first time. It was May 7th. Nice. And this person had moved in with her. I believe she moved out, I said April 1st. This person came in, moved in with her in her new place. May 1st, maybe?
Well, Anthony was still there.
I don't know. No. In her new place.
In her new place. All right, gotcha. All right, I'm sorry. So May of 2025 is when this person moved in with her.
Right, but while she was still residing in my home, a person did come and visit her, I believe in November, and then stayed in the home with her around the children December 23rd and stayed until January 1st. And then went back home to her home.
Okay.
But then physically moved up here around the end of April, and when she got her new place.
Okay. In talking to Anthony, I realized he was going through a lot, and he was paranoid, and he was schizophrenic, and everything else. But did he ever talk about having any marital problems between you and him? Did he ever say anything about marital problems? Did he ever say anything about that before he went missing?
No, but it was always an ongoing thing. Like I said, I've always told them, it's better to have two happy homes than one miserable, or if you're going to stay together, at least let me put a mobile home in the back, a trailer in the back. And there was at one point where the bickering was so bad, it was the fights all the time from what I was told with the kids, that I said to her, and this was quite a while back, maybe we should look into a full-time facility for him where we can visit, and I know he's safe. He's getting the proper med, and this was also because he would say, I think she's drugging me, Ma. I think she's poisoning me, Ma. And, me now living there, seeing the situation, I'm assuming that he's getting paranoid, more paranoid. I don't know what was going on. because I never can get anything from her. So I said maybe we can look into a full-time facility for him, so I know he's getting healthy, he's eating right, he's safe. I don't have to hear that he's walking on the road, get a call that he got hit and killed, and the kids aren't seeing this fighting. And she said, yeah, well, I don't know of any place. And we looked to see maybe insurance-wise they can do, because I couldn't do anything because he's, old enough. I don't know what their insurance was, if they would pay for it or however it would work. And then that was dropped. And then, this was probably a couple of years back. And then when he went in May, I said, I want to put a mobile home or something in the backyard. And then he can have his escape instead of walking so he doesn't get hit by a car. And he can, unwind. Kind of like a he shed, what do you call them?
Yeah, man cave. Man cave.
That's it. He was not aware of this yet. I never had the opportunity to talk to him about it. Only she was aware of it. And, my sisters, because of course I told them I'm thinking about doing that. I was asking what they thought, and they were like, oh, that sounds good, whatever. And my husband, I spoke with him about it, and they were like, okay, well, when he comes out, we'll talk to him, see if that's what he would want, and we'll try to get it on the property for him. I never got the opportunity to tell him. So she was aware of it. So, I don't know what happened. Okay. Like, maybe she spoke to him about it. I don't know.
Okay. And we have to remember that Anthony did say some things about he thought his wife was poisoning his food and everything, but we also have to remember that he was talking about people being after him and all these things, and pretty much this has all been dismissed as being connected to his schizophrenia, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. How hard has this been? Barbara, like I said, it's been a year and roughly 20 days, something like that. How tough has the past year been?
I can't even breathe days. It hurts to even say his name.
Yeah.
Lost at all times. And I have to take sleeping pills to sleep so I don't have any nightmares. I basically tried to go without any thoughts in my head because it's the only way I can get through work and to function for the kids, when we do see them. It's been hard. And now I'm back in the home where he was and waiting for him to come knocking on the door. And it hasn't happened. It's hard. I can't eat, I can't sleep. Everybody keeps telling me I'm fading away. I don't know, but it's very hard. I keep looking out the window towards the woods and hoping to see him say, hey, Mom.
Yeah.
And it's not happening.
And are you living in that house now?
Yes.
Where he disappeared, where he was last seen?
Yes, I'm hoping that he comes knocking on the door.
Okay.
It's very hard. But
somebody you haven't mentioned, in fact, it did not even come up in our previous conversation. We've not talked about Anthony's father in all of this. Can you talk about him? I don't even know. Maybe he's not even still alive. I don't know. So I apologize if he's already deceased. But how has he handled this?
He's a very quiet person. Like I said, Anthony gets a lot of that from him. He has breakdowns, but he tries to do it privately, but I do see him have these breakdowns. Again, he can't talk about him. He doesn't say his name much because he loses it. And he's trying to keep, roof over our heads and trying to stay strong for the kids. So, it's tugging at him, but he tries to he keeps his composure. I think he keeps it much more than I do, but he doesn't try to show those emotions.
Okay.
I guess he's trying to be a tough guy through it.
Yeah, that's what we try to do. I know, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Do you have a Facebook page, website, anything like that set up for Anthony's disappearance? If so, why don't you tell the listeners about it right now?
No, I'm just on my Facebook page and posting out his pictures and anything that, any place that I can get his name out there. I don't have any.
Okay.
I don't have that kind of knowledge. I don't.
Okay.
I just try to reach out to as many people to missing and vanished and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And as well with you. But yeah, I just keep reposting and refreshing the flyers that we have out there for him.
Yeah.
You know, just talking to anybody that I can about it.
Right.
But it's just, I mean, I do get crazy phone calls. I mean, I got one that people calling me from Mexico saying we have him.
I bet. There's a lot of scammers out there. A lot of scammers. Got to be careful.
Oh yeah, they're like, if you want to see him, send me money. I'm like, okay, I gotta go. Bye.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Barbara, any final words before we complete this interview?
I just want to see him come home, and if anybody has anything out there that's helpful, I would really appreciate it. You know, anything, a video of him walking, in what direction, or seeing him since. But I just find it hard. It's been over a year. I'm hoping maybe she did the right thing and she signed into a facility, and because of HIPAA and she's still married, I'm not allowed to know, and that he's actually getting the help, and he's getting healthy, and he's going to come home. But to me, it's, you have someone who was afraid. He's not on his meds.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any water and stuff, and walking on a highway with flip-flops and 94 degrees. He would have passed out, and someone would have seen him, and he would have been in a hospital, and by now I would have known.
Right.
By dehydration that summer. And nothing. I'm just hoping that somebody has it in their heart and says, yes, I did see him, and yes, I know where he's at. Again, that's my hopes.
Barbara, thank you for appearing on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And that was my July 16th, 2025 interview with Barbara, mother of Anthony Reyes. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. I made a map analysis video for Anthony's disappearance. You can now find it on Unfound's YouTube channel. To begin my summation, I want to reiterate what was said in the interview. There is no way I believe that Anthony's wife was poisoning him, and that somehow he just happened to have died within that half hour that Barbara was gone. I am absolutely positive that the poison talk was due to Anthony's schizophrenia that seemed to be getting worse with each passing year. Having said that, though, and from an analytical, objective point of view only, I must at least entertain the idea that Anthony did not disappear on his own. Why? Because if the situation were reversed, and it were Amanda Reyes who allegedly walked off, and her husband was saying, "Oh, I'm not sure which way she went," we all know what we'd be thinking. Sure, would examine this hypothetical Amanda's history of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, certainly. But we would also know that many times in disappearances like Amanda's, the husband did something, especially if marital problems had been known. Now, when a guy goes missing under similar circumstances like Anthony has, the odds of a wife being involved is a lot lower. A lot. It is a low, low, low possibility. However, it is not a zero possibility. Case in point, the disappearance of Shannon Collins. One that in many ways is like Anthony's, although Shannon did not have any mental health issues. Shannon's wife and her daughter from a previous marriage have been charged with a variety of crimes tangentially connected to Shannon's disappearance, most prominently continuing to cash his military retirement checks, something that is highly illegal. Granted, though, neither has been charged at this point with Shannon's disappearance itself. But this shows how all of us must at least consider, if only for the span of this podcast, the idea that something happened at Anthony's house while Barbara was gone. You will get no argument from me that the stats surely say that for a person like Anthony, the odds of him walking off on his own are much higher than any other theory, given what we understand about this case. However, we analyze foul play and other scenarios because the facts don't rule out other possibilities as well. And not because we want foul play or anything in particular to be the reason that Anthony is not around now. It's not personal. In fact, I don't care why Anthony went missing. I don't care who did it, if in fact anybody did it. I just want him to be found. And I believe Anthony's biological family feels the exact same way. One more important point about Anthony's disappearance. His wife took a polygraph test. She passed it. And that is the reality of it. If you'd like to hear and read more of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Anthony Reyes, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast and sign up to partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.